They say if you get sent to prison, it's a good practice to punch the biggest guy on day one to set the tone you want to be messed with. Now, I've never been to prison, but I would advise you not to do that if you go. I got somewhat similar vibes when new LSU head football coach Brian Kelly recently told the Varsity House podcast he wants to, quote, beat Nick Saban. I want to play him in the regular season, Brian Kelly said. And to be totally honest, I feel like he kind of swagger jacked Jimbo a little bit from last year before the season. And look, we all know Brian Kelly came to the SEC because he wants to compete against the best in all aspects on and off the field. He wants the smoke. I respect it. And some guys can't lay their head down at night on the pillow without knowing what could have been. And that's great. That's what you should want. But calling out Nick Saban before you're even a year deep in the SEC is a big mistake, mainly because it's totally unnecessary. I'm the most confident guy around, like I'm sure most of y'all are. But I also realize there are levels to this thing. You can't give Saban any inch or be able to give him any extra motivation to add to a series that's become a national factor and really must-watch games between Alabama and LSU. I think the Brian Kelly hire was a great move, and they've done work in the portal. But LSU, from a roster standpoint, is still not where Alabama currently sits. So I'll say this. If you are going to punch the biggest guy day one in prison, or call out the best coach to ever do it in a league that you're a freshman in as a coach, don't be surprised if they hit back. Brian Kelly. Mm-hmm. I love the confidence. Didn't like the accent. Love the confidence. I love the hire at LSU. I think he's going to do well. But Blaine, you have one word for this whole situation that I think sums it up. It starts with a W.
Why?
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 Why do this?
I love this.
Why
I
do this?
love this. I have never been a Brian Kelly fan, but I think I may start today just
That's all it took?
When he
That's
left
all it
Notre
took.
Dame, this is all it took. When he left Notre Dame and went to LSU, what did we say? We used a phrase on this show. We said, wow, he wants the smoke. And for some of our older audience members, wanting the smoke means you're not afraid to go at the best. Not only did he do that, but now he's saying, I want to beat Nick Saban. I don't think this is him taking a shot at Nick Saban. Taking a shot at Nick Saban would sound like, I'm going to beat Nick Saban. That's a little bit different. He said, I want to beat Nick Saban. And this isn't just some guy who was at a smaller school who took the LSU job. We're talking about the winningest coach in Notre Dame history. Left that to go to LSU. And think about it. Brian Kelly hasn't won a national championship.
Nope.
He didn't start by saying, I came down here because I want to win a national championship. He said, I want to beat Nick Saban.
How do you think you
if
win
you're Nick Saban, you have to love this. This has to be a badge of honor. A guy who's the winningest head coach in Notre Dame history came down to the SEC, left all that to come to the SEC, not even to win a national championship. He just wants to beat you. I love it.
Well, first of all, if you're going to win a national championship, you got to go through Bama.
Sure.
I don't know, last 10 years, I think
as long as Nick's there, you're going to have to go through Bama.
But this is nothing new for Nick Saban. This is nothing new. At what point, from fans to coaches, can we figure out that when you say we want Bama, it never ends up how you think it's going to end up? I love the confidence, but this is so unnecessary. They are going to drag you this year. Maybe next year, I would have said it when Bryce is gone and they don't have the best player on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, but they're going to drag you this year. He drug you at Notre Dame by 28, all right? That roster probably when at Notre Dame might be a little bit better than the roster they have right now at LSU. That roster at LSU still needs some work. But this is the type of thing. If you rattle this dog's cage, this dog will bite, man. I'm an Auburn fan. I see it every year. You don't want this type of smoke.
Look, it's like the drum set on Step Brothers. You just don't touch it. I know you want to beat Nick Saban. I want to win the lottery. I like ice cream and good movies. Like, this is obvious stuff. We know. We don't need you to tell us that you want to beat
I need it. I need to know. I need to know that you went down there to do this. Now, I don't want to be on record in this chair as saying they're not going to get drugged. You're going to get drugged. You're going to get drugged now.
You got to pick a better year to do this.
You and Jimbo back to back, except I think LSU at least has Alabama at home. I don't want to be on record saying they're not going to get drugged.
Pull up LSU schedule.
I just
pull up LSU schedule.
I just want to say
and I want to hear what the Booster Club has to say about this as well. But pull up the schedule. let's just go through it year one for Brian Kelly. Let's play a game. Let's play a game called Let's Get in the Jeep and go run around Jurassic Park a little bit. Cone, what I'm saying is, again, this doesn't help you at all.
Oh,
and
I'm
the
not
stuff
saying
with
it's
Jimbo,
a smart move.
Nick is already pissed.
I'm not saying
Okay,
it's a
Nick's
smart
already
move.
pissed.
I'm not saying he should have done it. I'm not saying they're going to win the ball game. I'm saying I love it.
But why?
I love it. Okay?
Why? Like, why?
You know
I just
what?
don't
'Cause he
understand.
could go up
Why
there and
do
stand
this?
at the podium and, we're just hoping to have a good season and maybe we can.
Well, why don't
Yes,
hey, how about
do
this?
that.
How about you take
No,
that?
I want to
How
beat
about you
Nick
have every
Saban.
game be equal? Every game should be equal. It shouldn't just be about Bama. Every game, if you're a real head coach, every game should matter, whether that's Vandy, East Carolina, Georgia, or Alabama. And you want to know how it's not real to say we want Bama? I don't see a lot of Georgia fans out there screaming, we want Bama, because they've seen it, they know what it's like, and they respect it. It's a mountain that you got to climb, and some mountains you can't talk your way out and over. You have to work to get past this, and that roster ain't ready.
Do you think Brian Kelly thinks just because I've come to LSU, now I'm going to beat Nick Saban?
Yes,
it doesn't
He
work.
thinks
Yes.
Just because I've
Yes,
come
I think
it's
he's
not that
don't work
easy.
like that,
It's
buddy.
not that easy.
All right,
should think
y'all ready
that,
for the
though.
schedule?
Yeah, but he should think that way, though. I want my head coach to think we can beat anybody and coach like that. But don't go say it on the podium.
All right, first week one. They
Florida
got
State, right?
they got FSU.
Neutral side,
Where's
I
that?
believe.
Neutral
Give me
side?
FSU.
So it's going to be a neutral side, I believe.
Yep, give me LSU.
Win.
All right, then they have like Southern University.
Win.
All right, then they got Mississippi State at home,
Win.
New Mexico at home,
Win.
Auburn on the road,
Loss.
Tennessee at home,
Win.
I have that as
really
a loss.
loss.
I have a loss.
At Florida, win.
That's going to be a good one.
I'll give him a win on that one.
Ole Miss at home,
I'm going to say
I
loss.
think they lose. I think
All
they
right.
lose to Ole Miss.
you got Bama at home.
Loss.
Loss.
You go to Arkansas.
Loss.
You got UAB at home.
Win.
You go to A&M. This is what I'm saying. Why?
6.
Why?
I have
Why make it harder
Well,
than it's going to already
Again,
be?
It's not just, and I think you made a good point. It's not just, the SEC is, and people will argue this till they're blue in the face, but they don't understand it. It's not just Nick Saban and Alabama in the SEC. That's not the hardest part of the SEC. Is it hard to beat Alabama? Yes, it's unbelievably hard. But the hardest part about playing in the SEC isn't just about playing Alabama. It's everything else really outside of Vanderbilt that you have to go through. There's 2 off weeks, the bye week and Vandy right now. And everybody else is kind of coming up. Auburn's a little bit down. We'll see how they do. South Carolina's coming up. Tennessee's coming up. Arkansas's coming up. Kentucky's coming up. Mississippi State returns a lot of guys, including Jolly Will Rogers back there at quarterback.
Will's nice with it.
Who's maybe the most underrated quarterback outside of Jake Haener at Fresno State in the country, who Jake almost ended up at Washington, who will lose to Kent State, David Cone. I'm 100% with you on that.
think so?
Starting to hear a little more of that in the national mind frame.
to Washington a couple years ago.
They did. So shout out Montana. But it's having to play the Arkansas. It's having to go to the Mississippi States. That is what makes the SEC, not just the top. And that's where people from outside the conference, I think, get a little confused. And yes, has Alabama been the best team in the SEC? Yes, but the conference has to have a best team. You have to have a best team. Every year you have to have a best team. You may have 2 teams that are close, but no team is created equal. That's why, again, if anybody ever tries to argue with you about the SEC and not being dominant, it's just Alabama and it's just Georgia, number one, they don't understand, but a great testimonial will be after a couple years, you ask Brian Kelly, who's at LSU, you ask Brian Harsin, who's at Auburn. How about we ask Oklahoma and Texas after they're in there for a few years, and then we'll see. If you like that content, go ahead and subscribe, because we're going to be balling every day on Crain and Company. Hit that like button while you're at it, and go ahead and smash it like Derrick Henry on an ISO run.